It all begins with the creation. Or does it? I'm Dr. Paul Petersen. Welcome to another series of Tidbits from the Bible. Our topic this particular quarter is Genesis, the first book of the Bible. I will cover Genesis in 13 presentations. I will not be able to make one for each chapter. The book is rich, it is long, it contains a lot. Welcome to the study. For those who study, I will recommend some extra material, primarily the wonderful commentary by Dr. Jacques Ducang in the series with the New International Seventh-day Adventist Commentary. For those who are particularly interested in narrative studies, the book on Genesis by Lawrence Turner is also maybe an eye-opener and very rich in its observations of the biblical narratives in Genesis. Let's get back to the text. It begins with creation. These are the first two chapters of the Bible. Many people will week after week confess in the church their belief in God, the Father, the Creator of heaven and earth. But that is in reality unique for the Bible. If we go to the Greek Hellenistic culture of New Testament times or even before, creation was not a topic. What was eternal was the world. The name for the world was cosmos. And cosmos meant not only the world, it also had the meaning beauty. We have a derivation in the word cosmetics. To the Greeks, the world was beautiful and eternal. All the gods had a beginning. But in the biblical account, God is Creator who is outside the created world, outside matter. He is independent of all created. He created it out of nothing. This majestic picture of God is clear and evident on the first pages of the Bible. Now, some would say, but the word used for God's actions, his creation, bara, that does not mean creation out of nothing. The answer to that is no, the word as such does not indicate that. But the way God created does. He created by saying. He created by his word. That is in itself indicating creation out of nothing. He spoke and it stood there. So, don't be fooled. It is obviously creation out of nothing. And God is a majestic God. But as you read chapter 1 and chapter 2, from verse 4, second part of verse 4 in chapter 2, suddenly the way God is presented changes. God is no longer the majestic. He is a personal God. He's not just the transcendent God. He is also the immanent. He is the one who's come near to us. And that has led many scholars to claim that there are two different, contradicting accounts of creation in these first two chapters of the Bible. Now, I will suggest to you, and you study the work by Dr. Ducang, I'll suggest to you that there are certainly two very different ways of describing God. But these are supplementary, literally deliberate works where first you have the majestic God creating everything, and then you have follow up on the first creation account. You have a focus on the creation of the first home of humankind, but you don't have a full creation account in the second part. But these two supplement each other. Listen, for instance, to the very opening of the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. And now then you have like an extra coming in from the side. Now the earth was formless and empty. darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And then comes God's actions here in words, and God said that, let there be light. When you move to chapter 2, verse 4, the second part, you will notice a similar structure. When the Lord God made the earth and the heavens, and then you have a parenthesis. No shrub of the field had yet appeared on the earth, and so on. And then you move back in verse 7 to the action by God. The Lord God formed the man from the dust of the ground. So you have the introduction, then you have a parenthesis filling out the background, and then you have the action of God. And when you go into detail, you'll notice that the parallel is even more marked. In the first chapter, and the first part of the creation, the first account, you could say, the name for God is Elohim. That is the majestic, the transcendent God. But in the second story, it is the Lord God, it is Yahweh Elohim. That is indicating God's personal touch, his immanence. God comes near. And then in the first account it says heavens and earth, or heaven and earth. It is a plural word in itself. But in the second it is, they are turned around, so it is earth and heaven. So what you have is two introductions that are deliberately formed in contrast, which means is it deliberate, it is one person, it is not contradictory. And some would point to a difference in sequence in chapter 2 from chapter 1, but remember, chapter 2 is not a full account of creation as such. In both of these accounts you have 7 actions of God. You have 7 days, and the 7th day is the Sabbath. That is the climax. In the second account from 2:4b, you have 7 actions of God culminating in the creation of the woman and the establishment of marriage and family. So you have 2 climaxes, the Sabbath and the marriage. Let's look at the first account, the majestic one, where God builds like he builds a house. That was a very important metaphor to people of Mesopotamia, and probably also to people in what we would call Palestine, in the area of the Israelite people. That is, to build a home. That was what gods did. That was what emperors did, or rulers did. And the first part of that is the role of the architect. You have to have the design. That is what you see in the first 3 days of creation. You have light separated from darkness. You have the atmosphere and the sea that is formed on the second day. You have then the organization of the dry land, the earth. But then the interior designer arrives. He fills in what the architect had designed. So day 4 matches day 1. Here you have the heavenly bodies that is filling in to help separate light from darkness. On day 5 you are filling in the atmosphere and the sea with the birds and the animals of the oceans. And on the 6th day you have the filling in of the dry land by the creation of the animals on the ground and the creation of human beings. So you have form, design, and filling, interior design. And then comes the climax. There's the 7th day. And the 7th day is a highlight. When you have built a house, or a temple. Of course, you could say it's a temple when it is an abode for God. When you have built such a house or temple, you have the form, you have it filled in. Then comes the best part, the important part, the communion between those who are to live there. So on the seventh day, the Sabbath, you experience communion. God created that day as a sign of his communion with humankind. He visits people. He wants to be together with them. God is a person. That's why he's not working all the time. He takes a breath. He stops. He makes a pause. He works the 6 days and then he stops. He's a person. He's not a machine, not just an impersonal power or robot. That is the Sabbath. And while you at the end of the first 6 days would have, it said, and everything was good. Now, God saw all that he had made and it was very good. That is the refrain of the 6 days. But you don't have that for the seventh day. Why? Because on the seventh day, you move from that which is good and beautiful a step further onto that which is holy. You move from beauty to holiness. That is the Sabbath. A holy time. As you move into the second part, the second narrative, story, account, it is in itself a unique literary genre. Then the climax is the creation of the woman. Let me say just a few words. The description from verse 18 is the following. The Lord God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I'll make a helper suitable for him." And notice here that while you had the 6 statements, it was God saw it was good. In this case, it was not good. But of course that means it will be good when God creates the woman. And then she's called a helper. Oh, there are a lot of those people who want to spend their time denying the original equality of the genders by saying that this is like a helpmate. Actually, it is not. The Hebrew word used, etzer, is commonly used and is never used in a derogatory sense or a submissive sense. Rather, the opposite. Sometimes it means help. Sometimes it means even salvation. In Psalm 121, when the psalmist calls to heaven, "From where comes my help? My help comes from the Lord." That is the word. And some would say, but the woman is created subsequent to man, to the male, then she must be submissive from the beginning. Well, have you noticed that the animals are created before man? Does that make them higher? No, you cannot argue that way. This is the original equality between the genders. It is a climax. It is a climax that leads humankind through marriage and family to experience some of the unity and communion that God also wants humans to experience with him on the Sabbath, and which reflects the unity and communion and fellowship within the Godhead itself. Thank you for listening to this first tidbit from Genesis. I look forward to continue the series, and you're welcome back.